Picture this. It's the 1960s, and we've got this artist surrounded by TVs. But he's not just watching them.
No.
He's using them to make art. And get this, in the process, he kind of predicted how we use the internet today.
It's wild, right?
It is wild. And that's what we're diving into today, the legacy of Nam June Paik.
You know, the godfather of video art.
Exactly. But we're going beyond that label because he's influenced so much more than just art.
Absolutely. We've got articles, museum archives, even descriptions from old exhibitions, and they all point to a guy who saw where technology was going.
Decades before it happened. It's like he had a crystal ball or something.
Right. So our mission today is to trace how this artist, working mainly with TVs, ended up shaping everything from those viral videos we watch
To those super high-tech art installations. It's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, it all begins with how Paik totally revolutionized the television itself. Go back to the early 60s, TVs were just becoming a thing in everyone's home.
Right, like a novelty still.
Yeah, but Paik saw them as this artistic goldmine. He wasn't into just the box, you know? It was the moving images, the sounds, that whole world of broadcast media. That's what fascinated him.
So he's basically predicting post-internet art before the internet even existed.
Exactly, like that art that uses digital tech as like its main ingredient.
It's crazy when you think about it.
No, totally. To really grasp how radical Paik was, you gotta imagine the art scene back then. Painting and sculpture, that was the big league.
The establishment.
Exactly. Then Paik bursts onto the scene in 1963 with this solo show, Exposition of Music Electronic Television. He's messing with TV sets, turning them into sculptures and these wild experiences. No one had seen anything like it.
It's like he's screaming, hey, this TV is not just for vegging out. It can be art. It can be interactive. You can express yourself with it.
You got it. And the reviews from back then, the descriptions of the show, they all emphasize how Paik wanted people to participate. Like, get in there, be part of the artwork, not just stand back and stare like you would at a painting.
Such a different way of thinking about art.
Huge shift.
And it's like, when you think about how he was playing with images and sounds, like mashing them up and messing with them, it's so similar to what we see all over the internet now.
Totally. The quick cuts, the way brands mix personal stuff with political messages, all that. Paik was already doing that stuff decades ago.
That Elephant.com article made that connection to Richard Turley's work, the MTV rebrand he did in 2015.
Yeah, all those grainy visuals, very 90s. But Paik was already there in the 60s, like way ahead of the curve.
It makes you wonder if Paik could see how obsessed we are with the internet now, if you'd be like, I told you so, or just blown away.
I know, right? And it's not just the visuals. Even his decision to avoid using CCTV in his art, it kind of speaks to our anxieties now about data privacy and all that.
Yeah, like how tech can be misused.
Right. You can see that in his archive materials at the Nam June Paik Art Center. It suggests he consciously wanted to use tech in a human way, not for spying on people.
It's brilliant, really. It's like he's using this playful, fun approach to technology. But underneath, there's this sharp critique of how it can be used to control us.
Exactly. And this leads us to another amazing thing. Paik he used the language of mass media, you know, stuff everyone understands.
Sneak in social commentary?
Yes. He called it the Trojan horse strategy.
Genius. So he's packaging these complex ideas in this entertaining way.
Think about Good Morning, Mr. Orwell, his 1984 New Year's Day broadcast. He plays on the fears around Orwell's 1984, that dystopian future, but he does it through this really light, engaging show.
Broadcast across multiple countries, no less.
Exactly.
It's so subversive. He's exposing people to different cultures, new ways of thinking, but he's not preaching at them. He's just letting it unfold.
Exactly. And this idea of using technology to connect people, to challenge what's normal, it pops up all over Paik's work, especially when you look at his electronic superhighway prophecy.
Which is wild because he coined that term, electronic superhighway,
Yeah.
back in the 70s, way before the internet was even a thing. So what exactly was he imagining?
He saw this world where information would be zipping around super fast, this global network connecting everyone across borders, allowing ideas to flow freely.
Like a proto-internet.
Exactly. And he even predicted that media formats would become obsolete quickly, which is, you know, our daily reality now. New phones, new apps, it's relentless.
It's mind-blowing how spot on he was. And he also predicted everyone would have their own TV channel to express themselves. Basically, he foresaw YouTube influencers and that whole person as content culture we're living in.
It's crazy, isn't it? He really understood that tech wasn't just about gadgets. It was about giving individuals the power to create, share, and connect.
Like a true democratization of media, where anyone can have a voice and reach a global audience. It's remarkable. And what's even cooler is that he didn't just predict these things, he actually explored them in his art. Always experimenting, pushing those boundaries, turning things upside down.
And the spirit of experimentation, it wasn't limited to his visual art. It spilled over into his lifelong passion for music.
Oh, wait. There's a musical side to this tech-savvy artist. Tell me more.
Pukti, believe it or not, had a background in musicology. He started at Munich University, so he was really deep into music theory.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. He also wanted to shake up the classical music world. You know, it can be pretty stuffy and traditional.
Yeah, not exactly known for its wild side.
Exactly. So he injects fun, performance art, and even a little scandal into the mix.
Scandal. Okay, now I'm intrigued. What kind of scandal are we talking about here?
So Polk had this longtime collaborator, the cellist Charlotte Moorman, and their performances. Legendary. Avant-garde, often involving nudity. Sometimes they'd even use the human body as an instrument.
Hold on. Nudity in classical music performances. That's definitely not your typical Beethoven concert.
Not at all. They were deliberately pushing limits, using shock, humor to challenge what classical music was supposed to be, even the very definition of art.
I bet that caused quite a stir back then. What were they hoping to achieve with these unconventional performances?
They wanted to make music more relatable, more engaging, more relevant to what was happening in the world. They were also taking on censorship, challenging the norms around bodies and sexuality.
So it's that same playful, subversive energy we see in his video art, right? Using art to provoke, challenge, start those important conversations.
Precisely. And there's this incident really highlights their approach. Moorman gets arrested in '67 for public indecency during one of their performances.
That takes serious commitment to your art. What did Paik do?
Well, he responds by creating these sculptures directly referencing the arrest in Moorman's performance. There's TV Bra for living sculptor, TV Cello, works that blend television screens with elements of her cello playing. Like he's merging music, visual art, and social commentary all into one.
Powerful statement. It's like he's saying, you want to censor art, you want to control bodies. Fine, I'm going to turn those acts of control into art.
Exactly. He was fearless, he refused to be silenced, and used his art to make a statement about artistic freedom and the absurdity of trying to control creativity.
It's incredible how he weaves together these seemingly different things. Technology, music performance, social commentary. It all becomes this cohesive and thought-provoking whole.
Right. And that's a theme that runs throughout Paik's career, this blurring of boundaries. He's always experimenting, pushing those limits, challenging the very notion of what art can be. And this leads us perfectly into another aspect of his work that's incredibly relevant today: immersive art experiences.
Oh yeah, we hear immersives everywhere now. But Paik was doing this long before it became a buzzword. What made his approach to immersive art so groundbreaking?
Well, you got to go back to those early experiments in the '60s. He was already integrating interactive elements, inviting viewers to participate, not just passively watch.
Like his foot switch experiment,
Yeah.
where people could use a pedal to change the images on a screen. It's like the granddaddy of all those interactive installations we see in museums today.
Exactly. But for Paik, it was more than just cool tech. He was creating these fully immersive experiences that would engage all your senses and really mess with your perception of what's real.
And nothing showcases that better than his 1993 installation Sistine Chapel, which was revived at the Tate Modern in 2019. The descriptions of that exhibition are just wow.
Yeah, talk about overwhelming. It was designed to completely engulf the viewer. They used 34 projectors, can you imagine, to create this massive kaleidoscope of images projected on every surface. And you could wander around and experience it from all these different angles. Total spectacle, but also this deeply thought-provoking exploration of art, technology, and the human experience.
34 projectors. I gotta admit, it makes me think of those immersive Van Gogh exhibits that pop up everywhere. You know, they just project some paintings on the walls, call it an experience, and charge you an arm and a leg.
That's a great point. Paik's work really helps us critique those kinds of experiences. He was after something much deeper than just a visual spectacle. It was about using technology to create a truly enveloping sensory experience, one that challenged our very perception of reality.
Yeah, he's pushing us to think about what true immersion really means. Like, are we really experiencing art more deeply just because we're surrounded by projections? Or is there something more to it? It's a question worth pondering.
Absolutely. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Paik's legacy. There are so many more layers to unpack. I'm excited to delve deeper with you.
Me too. I'm hooked. This is an artist who predicted the internet, Revolutionized music, redefined what immersive art can be, and he did it all with this amazing sense of playfulness and a deep understanding of how powerful technology can be. I can't wait to see where this exploration takes us.
It's amazing how Paik could take these complex ideas, about technology, about society, and make them accessible, even fun. There's this lightness to his work, this playfulness that pulls you right in.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't afraid to use humor. Even a little bit of chaos, right?
Hmm.
But like we've been talking about, there's always something deeper going on beneath the
Oh,
surface.
absolutely. Take his piece, 32 Cars for the 20th Century. Play Mozart's Requiem quietly.
Yeah.
The sculptor projected archive has some great documentation on it. Imagine this. Paik took these vintage cars, covered them in silver, filled them with old TV sets, and then just played Mozart's Requiem on a loop.
Okay, so we've got cars, TVs, and Mozart's Requiem. That's a pretty wild mix. Where did he even show this thing?
Right in front of Munster's City Palace. It was the last palace built in Germany before the French Revolution. So you've got this backdrop of historical change. Then you've got these symbols of 20th century technology, cars and the TVs, and this powerful, somber music playing over it all.
It's like he's layering all these historical references and symbols,
Yeah.
creating this multifaceted experience that makes you think about technology, history, even our own mortality. It's a lot to
Yeah.
take in.
And then there's the title itself. Play Mozart's Requiem quietly. Usually a requiem is played really loudly, dramatically, but Paik flips that, asking for quiet reflection. It's almost like he's asking us to think about how technology changes our understanding of time and history.
It makes you wonder, do you think Paik saw technology as something that disrupts our connection to the past? Or could it also be a way to preserve and reinterpret history?
It's interesting. I think Paik saw it as having the potential for both. On one hand, yeah, technology can speed up change, make the past seem far away, but it can also give us new ways to access and re-examine history. Like think about digital archives, online resources. We can engage with historical material in ways that we never could before.
That's so true. And speaking of re-examining the past, I'm curious about Paik's own legacy. I mean, he passed away in 2006, but his work feels so relevant today. How is he remembered in the art world and beyond?
Well, he's most famous for pioneering video art, but his influence goes way beyond that. He inspired so many artists working in different mediums, from performance art to digital art. He's really seen as a visionary who used technology to break boundaries and create these truly unique experiences.
For someone who might not be familiar with his work, where would you recommend they start? Are there any pieces or exhibitions that are like essential Paik?
I would definitely recommend checking out any retrospectives of his work. The Nam June Paik Art Center in Korea has a fantastic website with tons of archival materials, videos, even recordings of his performances.
And the ZKM Center for Art and Media has a really extensive online collection of his work. Plus, their exhibition descriptions are great. You can get a sense of his whole career trajectory and the context he was working in.
It's amazing how accessible his work has become. Even though he was creating before the internet was a big thing, it lets us appreciate his influence on contemporary art even more.
It's like we're building our own little electronic superhighway of knowledge and inspiration.
I love that. And it's important to remember that Paik wasn't working in a vacuum. He was part of this larger movement of artists and thinkers who were experimenting with new technologies in the 20th century, challenging those traditional artistic boundaries.
Right, that elephant.com article talk about artists like Peter Weibel and Valley Export, who are also doing these TV interventions, and Chris Burden, who made those kind of surreal TV commercials.
Yeah.
They were all playing with television in these really interesting ways.
Exactly. And we can't forget the Fluxus movement, which had a huge influence on Paik. Fluxus was this international group of artists, and they were all about experimentation, blurring the lines between art and life. They were known for these things called happenings, performances, ephemeral art, stuff that often involved the audience participating.
So how did those principles of Fluxus, how did those show up in Paik's work?
Well, Paik took those ideas, like blurring boundaries, challenging conventions, embracing chance and experimentation, and he brought them into the world of video. His work was often playful, often humorous, but it also tackled complex ideas. He wanted to make people think differently about the world around them.
And it's really inspiring to see how those ideas are still alive in contemporary art today. Artists are still pushing those boundaries, playing with new technology, finding ways to make art more accessible and engaging for everyone.
Absolutely. And Paik's legacy reminds us that art can be this really powerful force for change. It can be a catalyst for connection, and it can be a source of endless wonder.
It's interesting, too, because so much of Paik's work is about global interconnectedness. He was born in Korea, lived and worked in Japan, Germany, the US, and you can see this cross-cultural perspective reflected in his art. He was a true global citizen.
And this was at a time when global communication was much more limited than it is today. But he seemed to understand, even back then, how technology was breaking down those geographical barriers and creating opportunities for cultural exchange.
You can really see that in pieces like Good Morning, Mr. Orwell, which was broadcast simultaneously across multiple continents. He was using satellite technology to connect people across these vast distances, creating a shared experience that went beyond national borders.
It's a good reminder that art can be a powerful tool for fostering understanding and empathy between cultures. Paik wasn't just reflecting global interconnectedness, he was actively promoting it.
It's remarkable how he was able to use technology to create these global dialogues and challenge people to think outside of their own little bubbles. He really was ahead of his time.
He really was, and his work feels perhaps even more relevant now than ever as we navigate an increasingly interconnected world with all of its complexities and challenges.
It's almost as if his work predicted our current reality. The way we communicate, the way we consume media, the way we think about technology and its impact on our lives, it's all there in Paik's art.
He gave us a framework for understanding the complexities of the digital age, but he did it with humor, with intelligence, and with this deep sense of humanity.
As we get to the end of our deep dive into Nam June Paik, it's amazing to think about how one artist, working with what we now consider old tech, could leave such a huge impact, you know?
Yeah, it's like, look at TV now, it's practically vintage.
Right. But it makes you think about the power of someone's vision.
Oh, absolutely. Paik's creativity, his understanding of what makes us human, it's all there in his work. He wasn't just messing around with technology, he was using it to explore these big questions about how we relate to the world, to each other, even to ourselves.
And he wasn't afraid to ask those tough questions, push those boundaries, make us think differently.
It's something we can all learn from, right? No matter what we do.
Sure. Whether you're an artist or a scientist or just someone trying to figure out life, there's something in Paik's work that speaks to that.
I agree. His legacy isn't just about his art or the technology he used. It's about how he approached everything, his willingness to experiment, and this unwavering belief in the power of art to change things.
That's a pretty powerful message. And it leaves me with this one question. If Paik could see how we're using technology today, what would he think?
Oh, that's the big question, isn't it? Part of me thinks he'd be amazed by how far we've come, but maybe also a little disappointed.
How so?
Well, I bet he'd love that anyone can create and share stuff now, thanks to smartphones and all that. Like the whole democratization of media, that was something he was all about.
Right, giving everyone a voice.
Exactly. But I also think he'd be worried about some of the downsides of being constantly connected.
Like what?
All the surveillance, how easy it is to manipulate people, how tech can be used to control us.
He probably wouldn't be a fan of those immersive Van Gogh exhibits either, huh?
Maybe not. I think he was after something deeper than just pretty projections.
Yeah, for sure.
But ultimately, I think Paik would urge us to be aware of how we use technology, to be more conscious, use it for good, and remember its power to connect us, inspire us, even transform us.
That's a great takeaway. So for everyone who wants to learn more about this incredible artist, check out the resources we mentioned, like the Nam June Paik Art Center and the ZKM Center for Art and Media. There's so much out there to discover.
It's really a fascinating journey, and we encourage everyone to keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep creating. Who knows what the future holds?
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Nam June Paik. Until next time, stay curious.